So, can you hear me, Debbie? Can you unmute yourself?
There we go. Yes,
There
you
you go.
can.
Well, I just got an alert. I thought the meeting was 6:30, so clearly we're early. Anyway, I have to tell you, I've been thinking about you. Last year, I told you about the robin nest I had outside
Yeah.
the window, and you said, "Oh, well, they may come back to the same area, but they won't use the same nest." So I got rid of that nest. And
Right.
darn it, I got another robin family there.
So they've built a new nest. Yeah, that's what you want them to do, because if they try to use the old nest, it's likely to have mites in it.
Yeah,
And that
that's
could
what you
kill the
said.
babies. So,
No, they're there. Yeah,
oh, that's great.
yeah.
They found a safe place.
It is a safe place. Squirrels can't get to it. It's pretty, it's on a utility box on the side of the house.
Yeah.
So it's so much fun. There were 4 eggs. Just
Okay.
4. Yeah, I love watching it. It's so great.
Oh, that's cool. Well, hopefully they'll all hatch and all fledge. That'd be
they
great.
did last year. They did.
Okay.
I also had another experience last night with a bird. We were sitting outside and there was this bird that kept hovering. And I thought, what is that? It wasn't a
Hummer?
no, it wasn't. It was too big for a hummingbird. And I got close. It didn't have a long note, the long beak.
Yeah.
And so we looked it up, and apparently sparrows will hover
Really?
momentarily, for a little bit, and then they take off when they're looking for food if you have high grass. And my grass really needs to be it's really high. It's probably 12 inches high.
Oh, shoot. Yeah. They were happy with you.
Yeah, it was so great. I love watching it. Okay. Hi, folks.
Hello,
I'm going to
Chris.
step away for a minute.
Okay.
I'm going to step away.
All right. Well, hello, Mary Jane. Warren, how are you?
Hi, Debbie. How are you?
I'm hanging in there, my dear. I'm hanging in there.
Good.
Yeah.
What else?
Hello, Hillary.
Who's that?
Hillary Perkins.
Oh, okay. I just see from here up. Hi, Hillary.
How's Mozart?
He's being babysat by Larry right now. That will put his beak out of joint because he hates Larry. But you can't have everything. So. But I'm back up at Wild Bird feeding the babies in the incubators.
Oh, I read that today.
It's so neat.
I've been listening to a lot of vet shows and wildlife and somebody's exotic pet clinic. They get a lot of really cool cockatoos and wolves.
Yeah.
I don't think those are probably not pets, those owls.
Well, we do get parrots once in a while, but we send them to Star Avian Rescue.
Well, yes. And Sally. Hi, Sally. How are you doing today?
Unmute, Sally.
How are you doing today?
Reverend Sally, unmute. Unmute.
Oh,
I thought I had. Sorry. I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
All that moving around on yesterday, I was afraid it might have done you in.
No, I'm okay. I'm glad that there wasn't a whole lot of moving today.
Mm-hmm. You're back. We'll appreciate it.
Yeah. One thing I've discovered is I don't want anything around my waist because that's, close to where the incision is in my back.
Yeah.
So I need to buy a lot more shifts.
Well, now if it was the 60s, you could have my long midi dresses that went down to my ankles and were very loose. It was a delightful time.
There you go.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Hi, Linda.
Ding dong.
Ah, there's Linda.
We should go to
Gallery?
gallery,
I will.
Ouch.
Oh, no, I don't. I want this. What's all the ding dongs?
It's people coming on.
I just don't remember hearing them before. How are you, Donna?
Hanging in there. How about you?
Just fine, thank you.
Good.
I didn't get a chance to talk to you yesterday. I'm sorry. I don't know what part of your body you need that for, but I hope it heals.
My left leg specifically, although of course, you know, the older you get, the more pain in one area generalizes everywhere else.
Mhm. And there's Sarah and Dave.
So how is Michigan today? Say Sarah and Dave. It was chilly yesterday. Is it? You're on mute. Is it nice there today?
A
Have to
very comfortable 70-ish degrees.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Is Deon getting on?
So Dave wants to know if you'd like to see our fireplace,
Oh yeah.
which is lit.
Oh,
Oh, isn't that lovely?
Well, Mary Jane Cruz, I have the same picture of the dancing Indian.
oh, I love it. My grandmother was in Albuquerque in the 30s and really enjoyed the people she met there.
Yes, I
Of course.
have the girl and I have the man.
Oh, I just
and
happened. Go on.
they're from my grandmother.
Ah, I just saw that in a antique mall.
Oh,
Oh, I couldn't resist.
Peg has wings.
We're all coming.
This is a serious song.
Yeah, Doris.
No, it's an addition to Doris. Doris is here on the right, left-hand column.
Oh, yeah.
Third one down. It's probably the bishop.
Mm-hmm. Ah, Jay needs to be onto this. Yeah.
How is everyone today?
Good. How are you, Catherine?
Good.
Better every day.
Good.
Evening, everyone.
Bishop?
There he is.
Can you all hear me okay? Ah, awesome.
Yes.
It's good.
Yes.
Oops. Oh, wait. Ding dong.
Ding dong.
Oh,
If you all start out in a chorus of Ding Dong, the witch is dead, then we know we can. The only other song that I know that has Ding Dong in it is Ding Dong Merrily on High, and I don't think we're going to be singing Christmas right about now. So.
The other one is Avon calling.
Oh, good, agree.
I'm just glad our dog isn't here anymore. It would be disastrous. Every time a bell rang, like a door, he was barking his head off. It's the only time he ever really barked.
Oh, Mary Jane, I am so sorry. When did that happen?
Last March in 2020.
Well, we had COVID then. I am so, oh,
I know. He was old and every system was failing. So it was fine.
it was sweet. Oh, I liked him.
I know.
He loved it. He loved to be petted. So-
Yes. And to sneak a treat if you could.
Absolutely. Nothing wrong with that.
Isn't that a dog's purpose?
We occasionally have cheese rain in the kitchen. Is every time the dogs hear plastic rattle, then they think they're going to get cheese rain. Not always true.
Dogs are our guardian angels on earth. That's why they all go to heaven.
Absolutely.
I'll take it. Well, I'm going to give everybody about another minute, and then we're going to go ahead and get started.
I'll just say, so are cats.
Yeah.
And birds.
Yes.
Does it have, if you want to put down your name, Paul?
Nobody's gonna look.
No. They're gonna be on that
Watching the speaker.
speaker.
Ooh.
Well, according to my clock, it is 7:02, and so I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Pastor Sally, would you mind starting us off with a prayer?
Certainly. The Lord be with you.
Also with you.
Yeah.
Let us pray. Loving and gracious God, we thank you for this beautiful day that you have given to us to live. We thank you for this beloved community of saints that is known as Emmanuel Church. We thank you for our bishop and for the people of the diocesan office. We ask for your Holy Spirit's presence among, through, between, and within us. And we ask that we may hear your whisperings and listen to your voice, so that we may know, love, and serve you ever better. In Jesus' holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I think I just won bingo. I started talking while muted. So thank you so very much, Sally, for offering us an opening prayer. Canon Doris is joining us this evening, who I don't think need any introduction. I think you've probably seen her around somewhere at some point, you know. So thank you for being with us this evening, Canon Doris, and thank you all for taking up a part of your evening to be here as part of our conversation this evening. As normal, there is. I generally try to come to every meeting without any kind of agenda. So I don't have any agenda for our meeting tonight, except to be with you to try to answer questions that you may have or things that might be on your heart, and to just engage in some conversation around the life in the diocese, around the life at Emmanuel, and how myself or the rest of the diocese can be helpful to you in the ministry that we all share together. I normally would introduce Canon Doris and ask her to talk about what Canon of the Ordinary does, but I think y'all know that already, so no need. And I'm very grateful to Pastor Sally and Clive for their ministry with you as we continue in this time of transition. I know that I first met Sally, I have to tell you a bit of a confession. I met Sally as part of the search team. And so I just remember Sally as being this really imposing person who was telling me what to do for 3 days. No, not really. She was telling me what to do for 3 days, but she wasn't imposing. She was perhaps the most gracious person on the entire search team. So I am so very grateful to her and her ministry. And I've gotten to spend some time with Clive and the folks at Faith Church of India and the wonderful work that they're doing over there. And we've been keeping Clive and his family and their friends in prayer, especially with what's happening in India right now with the COVID cases and whatnot. So I encourage you to continue to hold them in prayer and to support them as best as we can. So with all of that, as I said, there is no set agenda for me. We are here to listen, to be in conversation, and to engage as much or as little as you would like to. it is probably in your best interest to ask us questions, because if not, we will have questions that we can find to ask you. So, and you probably want to ask us questions, because the questions that I can find to ask you, there are a lot of them. So I suspect that, and before we do all of that, I'm going to invite you a little bit of Zoom etiquette, which I suspect all of you know. If you please remain muted while you're not speaking, just so that we're not disturbed by too many background noises and stuff that happens in our everyday life when we're not on Zoom. And if you can, wave or use the raise hand feature, there's a little button at the bottom that you can use to raise hand if there's a question. And I'm going to invite you, once you unmute, if you could say your name, and let's go with your favorite flavor of ice cream. So when you unmute, just start with your name, your favorite flavor of ice cream, and then, jump on in with your question, comment, or conversation starter. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and open it up to you to questions or comments that you might have. I see Joyce Johnson.
I'm really Jody Johnson.
Ah, okay, Jody.
Jody Johnson, and my favorite flavor of ice cream is chocolate/strawberry. And I'm really, really interested in hearing this evening from a lot of people as we move forward in this time as Emmanuel is re-evolving.
Very nice. Thank you, Jody. James.
Yes, Jim and Marianne Groetsch. I've got something way out.
Oh, wait, you forgot your ice cream.
Caramel swirl. Thank you. Emmanuel has a history with the church in Louis, and we haven't heard anything about it in 2 or 3 years. I'm just wondering what's going on in Sudan, Southern Sudan, and with that church. And I one time I heard that we still have a sum of money. Have we sent all the money we can to them? Maybe they need a lot more than that. That's what I'm curious about.
And is their bishop okay?
Yeah, and is Bishop Stephen okay? Yeah.
Yes, so I can surprise. That is a question that I can actually answer. Our companion relationship, so our connection with the Diocese of Louis, came to an end last year in 2020. So we are no longer in companionship with them, but we are in conversation and we continue to pray for them. Stephen, their bishop, is now the Archbishop of the province. And they are doing relatively well. I just spoke to him about 4 weeks ago, just around a month ago. Well, not spoke to him. Him and I messaged back and forth on Facebook Messenger. So we just messaged back and forth a couple months ago. They have not been, because of the way Louis is spread out, they have not had too much by way of COVID cases. So they have been faring relatively well in the midst of the pandemic. And the diocese is doing pretty good considering everything. There had been some money left over, I think to the tune of about $80,000 or something like that, when I first arrived as the bishop-elect. And that check was sent off to the Diocese of Louis. And I think it was earmarked towards schools and diocesan buildings and stuff like that. So I know that project is well on the way. Bishop Stephen has sent me some pictures of some of the stuff that they've built. And he has a little, there's been a car that he can get around the diocese and a couple other things that we have helped fund that is doing tremendous work in the Diocese of Louis and beyond. So
are they still in a refugee camp?
I don't think they're still in a refugee camp. I think that they're back to, the tension between Sudan and South Sudan has begun to subside. I mean, pandemic kind of makes peacemakers really quickly, apparently. So they've been in a period of relative calm. And so they seem to be faring relatively well. But I will make sure that the next time that I message Stephen, that I pass on the prayers and the continued concerns of the folks here in the Diocese of Missouri.
Thank you.
We are in the process of getting a new companion relationship. One of the challenges with doing the companion relationship with the Diocese of Louis is that we were able to go there, but they weren't really able to come to see us. And that's really hard when you're trying to do a two-way companion relationship. And so right now the potential next companion relationship is probably with the Diocese of Puerto Rico.
Oh,
and so the intention with a place like Puerto Rico, Puerto Rico was devastated by Hurricane Maria. And there's still, it's no longer in the news spotlight, but it's still an ongoing thing there. And so the hope is that we will be able to go to Puerto Rico and that Puerto Rico folks can come here, since there's no visa and anything, so it really can be a two-way companion relationship. So we're beginning to work out what the details of all that looks like. And I suspect that if we offered people the opportunity to go to Puerto Rico in February, I don't think we're going to have too many people not wanting to go.
Thank you.
So, well, thank you, Jim. Great question. Anne Marie, and then Catherine.
I just have to jump on that. If there is a companion relationship with Puerto Rico, Emmanuel has a wonderful woman who was born in Puerto Rico and was one of our multilingual voices for Pentecost, and is offering Compline in Spanish on Thursday of this week. So if you are looking for someone who is a native of Puerto Rico and would be really good for that, we've got someone here in the parish.
Send on her email. I have some work for her to do. So thank you. Catherine. Oh, you have to unmute. And you got away without having to say your favorite ice cream.
Okay, Katherine Ziegler. My new favorite ice cream is Tillamook brand Udderly chocolate.
Ooh, see, you had me at chocolate, but go ahead.
Only at Deerberg's. It comes from Oregon. And it's a combination of chocolate and white chocolate and other chocolate. It's a chocoholic's delight.
I'll be right back.
So Deerberg's is the only store that carries it. My question, my husband and I are two of the people who have done the LMPC conflict class. Mm-hmm. And I would say this weekend was eye-opening and thought-provoking more than any other session that we've experienced. And what it left me with was there's so many other things to talk about. Dave Buck and I had conversation earlier about things that maybe small groups in the parish needed to really talk about. With the change, with COVID, we're kind of starting from scratch in a way. And I guess I have a feeling, I feel anxious, you LMPC people, about what the future holds with a new person coming, about those things we might need to continue processing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well,
what's the deal?
I'm going to add the canon to the ordinary to this conversation. She knew that was coming. Well, a part of any transition, so let me back up. Transitions are hard. No matter what kind of transition it is, transitions are hard. Even the simplest transitions are hard. And to have to look intently and intensely and intentionally at yourself, and to look at a system to say, well, where do we need to continue to transition? Where do we need to let go of some things? That's hard. And usually with a transition, it means that there's grief. Grief is both holy and wholesome. And it's the way that we begin to let go of things so that we can hold on, so that we can grab onto new things. And so you're in a period of transition and a period of unknowing. Like, well, we don't know what's going to come next. We don't know how things are going to be. And the challenge sometimes is when we get into that place is to just look back at the past and go, oh, well, we can just go back to being like that and everything should be fine. And we know inherently that we can't do that. You know, we want to, but we can't. And so I happen to be one of those people who firmly and truly believe that God always calls us further forward into a new and different future. And it means in many ways that we have to trust that God is going to be faithful as long as we continue to be faithful. I know that you're doing some wonderful work with the Reverend Edie Bird. She comes with lots of experience, and she can look at a system from the outside, and she can help you better see. And you know, a lot of the times, the best thing that you can do in a time like this is just move to whatever is next and not look too far down the road. You know, you can begin to plan for what comes down the road. It's kind of like I always picture it like a toddler. You know, if you ever watch a toddler begin to learn how to walk for the very first time, you know, they figure out how to stand up, and then they look down and they take the first step that's kind of wobbly, and they start shaking until they get steady, and then they look a little bit further down and take another step, and it's wobbly until they get their balance. In a sense, we're learning to walk again. You're learning to walk together again. And that's wobbly, and it sometimes can feel unstable. And the best thing at that stage is to just keep looking at where your next foot's going to get plopped down rather than looking at the end of the room. Because usually, if you notice, when a toddler looks up and tries to look too far ahead, you usually have a crash. So, and I suspect that Ken and Doris can say a little bit more on where we are and what comes next.
Yeah. How you doing, Catherine? It's nice to see you again. Oh, you're muted.
I'm good. I got more back surgery, Doris.
Oh, I'm sorry. I hope that takes care of some things. Yeah.
Hopefully this is the last one. Sorry, Doris came and took care of me at 6 a.m. at Dobbs.
So, but that's a really good question. What I would add to what the bishop has said is that LMPC, you know, that is a process, and so even after Edie is done, that doesn't mean that the process is done. And so continuing to work that process, to continuing to use the skills that you're learning are going to be really, really important. And the person that we looked at for Emmanuel was someone who was very skilled in systems to begin with, and understands them, has worked with them, and has worked where there's been some pain in congregations. So this is not going to be anything new to her. And just because somebody else is going to be in that office, that doesn't mean that the work is going to stop. And they're very, very invested in Emmanuel continuing the work that has been begun. So.
Thank you. I was anxious that someone would come in and say, okay, you're done with that and we're moving.
No. And one of the things in the people that I spoke with about possibly coming to Emmanuel, the very first thing was that they needed to be committed to this process. And if they weren't, then they weren't the right person for this time in Emmanuel's life.
Okay.
So that you don't have to scratch that part, at least that part of your anxiety, just off your anxiety list. Okay, Catherine?
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, they'll be committed to it. I promise you that.
Good to hear. Thank you, Doris.
And I will add to that to say, if you remember the last time that we sat we sat in this Zoom room, I said, you know, I want nothing but the best for Emmanuel. And I think that we have gone and we have found the best person that can be helpful in continuing this work for you. Lombard Mennonite Peace See, I am not the one to answer that question because I can
So-
never get the order right.
It's the Lombard Mennonite Peace Center, and they are really the gold standard in the teaching of and in dealing with conflict resolution, transition, and
Oh,
what
they're in
have you.
Lombard, Illinois. That's where my dad lives.
Yes,
So,
yes,
okay,
that's who they are.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. So other questions? Dave Buck.
Chocolate chip. Although I like the Wendy's frozen dairy dessert, I can eat those every day. This is my question. I think one of the strengths of the Episcopal Church is that we are willing to break the rules, to try new things. We're very creative, and we're open, and we're inclusive, and we're accepting. And again, we're the first denomination to try many things, I think, historically. And so my question is, as it relates to how we staff a permanent rector in a church, or in this case, Emmanuel, is that, again, this is my opinion. I think over the last 10, 20 years, the best people, rectors we've had are the interim ones, Doris, now Sally, and the assistant pastors, Hope Benko, Melanie and Chris Slane, and as you know, Whitney Rice, who I just think was phenomenal.
Thank you, by the way.
Is it possible for the Episcopal Church to break its rules and open up new opportunities for rectors at our church rather than following the same old traditional formula?
I am glad you asked that question because it literally goes in line with where we are actually headed as a diocese. So once upon a time, the model was that you would go spend lots and lots of money on a national search for a rector as a congregation. We know that that's just not possible sometimes. You know, to go spend upward of $60,000 to find a rector, that's a lot to be spending. And so one of the things that we are looking at here in the Diocese of Missouri is shifting away from calling rectors and moving towards what will be happening for Emmanuel is having a priest in charge. The priest in charge model is much simpler, it's much shorter, so you don't have this long gap. And the intention is that the priest in charge, what's the term that folks have been using, Doris? Is it try before you buy? Rent to own.
Rent to own.
So it's almost like a rent to own. So you get the priest in charge, and what a priest in charge model looks like is, well, let me back up. To do a priest in charge model requires a level of trust. That you have to trust the bishop's offices, the diocesan offices, enough that they will know the congregation to say, here may be someone that you may not necessarily have considered before, but might be good for the ministries and the values that you have. And so more and more congregations in our diocese are inviting the diocesan offices into that process of helping them call a priest in charge. What it does is, the diocese does the hard work. We do the heavy lifting of going through and looking at resumes and getting candidates and all that stuff. And the one or two that we think would be really good, we give the vestry an opportunity to interview and spend some time with, and they can say yay or nay when it comes to the one or two candidates that we would suggest to them. And then, after a period of time, that person can be called as director, or you could say, you know what, this was a great time for us, but this is not the person who is called to walk this journey long-term with us. So there is some movement to kind of move away from you just call a settled rector model that's beginning to happen here in the Diocese of Missouri. So great question. Thank you, Dave. Other questions? Clark. I know you from somewhere.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, chocolate chip is my ice cream of choice.
I am liking Emmanuel more and more. All these chocolate lovers, oh, keep going.
And as somebody who used to visit Ben and Jerry's when they only had an old gas station, one ice cream place, their Chunky Monkey was pretty good too. But I was just going to add to what Katherine said, that the priest in charge model is exactly what we did when Dan Appleyard came here as our priest. We went through that model, and we dated is basically how we did it. And after a period of time, we, if it was a mutual agreement, to call him as our permanent rector, and that's exactly what we did. And I think it worked out pretty well. So. Yeah. That's all I had to add for those of you that remember, 2 rectors ago, we went through that model. Will we have a specific period of time with our new priest in charge?
So yes.
How is that being set up?
So your priest in charge right now is being set up that the person is going to be there with you for a minimum of 5 years. And then after the 5 year, correct me if I'm wrong, Doris, at the 4th year, you can make the decision that this is the person that we would like to retain as our priest in charge, or you can say, you know what, this is not, or retain as your rector, or you can say, you know what, we would rather, that this is not the person to move on as our rector. So there will be some choices to be made with the leadership of the congregation at the 4th year, but the person is going to be the priest in charge for at least 5 years.
And is that, is there anything in place if it just isn't working?
Yes, that's where the vestry and my office working very closely together. Because as a priest in charge, the priest in charge serves at the discretion of the bishop, rather than a rector who is tenured. So if there is a significant problem, or if there's significant issues that the lay leadership of the congregation has with the priest in charge, that's where my office gets involved.
I think that would be a really good educational, parish-wide. I think there's, tenured is the first time I've ever heard that term for a rector. And I think there was lots of unknowns about what, the parish's rights are, and how do you handle conflict if there is with a rector. I think that was probably what we've struggled with the most over the last couple of years, really knowing what to do.
Yeah.
Who to call. We had no Ghostbusters to call.
Yeah, well, that would be me and Canon Doris and Canon Whitney. We are now your Ghostbusters, in a sense. But the challenge in anything like this, the hope is that there is not necessarily, there will be growing edges and growing together. But if there's significant conflict, the goal for me, and I think for Canon Doris, is that we don't want conflict to escalate. So if there is the beginning of some kind of conflict, we can't do anything if we are not aware. And so as soon as we are aware, we can figure out how we can step in to be part of the conversation, to diffuse the conflict, or if the conflict is to the point where it just, it's just untenable, that we can find a way to bring an end to that pastoral relationship.
And one of the reasons you engaging in the Lombard Mennonite Peace Center training program is so that you can look at past conflicts. You can see the patterns that have developed, and you can say, moving forward, we want to be handling things differently. And how do we do that? So all of this has been done looking to the future and looking at success, for Emmanuel, so that conversations can be had, earlier, that they don't get so entrenched and what have you. And we have to learn how to do that. So we're all working towards that together. Okay, Clark.
Yeah, and I think just, and I know you guys are aware, and we don't need to really go into lots of details, but I think there were some attempts to reach out to the diocese previously that didn't turn out well. And I think there's some deep scars that are still around for some of those issues. So I appreciate the open door, but there's some hesitancy, I think, as well. So I think the more education and I agree, I think the conflict training has been excellent. I mean, I've really enjoyed participating in it. I think it's, there's some sessions where you're scratching your head and other ones where you're thinking, man, I'm learning some new skills and, where was this a couple years ago? But just so you know, aware that there's some deep scars.
Well, I can only speak for me. The diocese is moving in a different direction than it has been in the past. As you can probably guess, I'm a little bit different than our previous bishop. And so we just have different styles. It's neither good or bad. I tend to be, let's lean into whatever the issue is. That's just how I am. That's how I've learned to be. I know I've had some conversations with some of the folks who are on the Zoom screen. Individually, I tend to try to make sure that I respond to every email and whatnot. So I really do see the diocesan offices as a resource. And I know that we have to build on the trust because it may not have been there in the past, or it may have been fractured. And so, I mean, I'm still not even a year as the bishop here in the Diocese of Missouri. So, I mean, June 13th will be exactly 1 year since I've been here. Although, in the midst of COVID, that's like 20 years or something like that. So retirement should be right around the corner. No, not quite. But we are doing things a little bit different, and that's okay. I mean, it's just different. It's neither good or bad. And so I tend to have an open door policy. I mean, my email is on the website. If you ever need to contact me, Doris's email is on the website. We try to be as accessible as possible, and we see ourselves as resources to the congregations. And on a personal note, I am pretty invested in Emmanuel being successful because you're right around the corner from my house, and I have a 9-year-old that I really want to get into a youth group so he can stop bothering me on Sunday mornings. So I am kind of invested in you all being successful and getting things going. So that's my personal note. So thank you for a great question, Clark. Other questions? Jim. Oh, you're muted.
Mute my audio. Okay.
There you are.
Yeah, there we are. This is not particular to Emmanuel, but it became painfully apparent that communication skills and management skills, we assume are just there because there's someone called a rector. I came out of a higher education background, and the faculty person would become dean of that particular department, and then they might move into administration and maybe some other capacity. But it didn't mean that he or she had the skills to manage. And we might have the greatest theologian, but if they're lacking interpersonal skills, it's painful. And we just, in my opinion, went through that pain because those skills were lacking. That's rhetorical. You may not need to comment at all.
No comment, no. Each one of us is blessed with a different set of gifts and skills. And, as clergy, we are trained to be a lot of things. Administrators is not one of them generally. That's why we generally rely on staff and other people. And again, there are some clergy that is their gift, that they are wonderful administrators. There are other clergy who are wonderfully pastoral. The thing is, you're not going to get someone who's going to have everything all the time. There is no such thing. I suspect Jesus had his own shortcomings as well. And it's part of the ministry of the whole community to fill in the gaps where things may be lacking at the invitation of the leadership. Like for instance, for me, when I was in a parish, I could not be in 5 places at once. No matter how much I tried, I just couldn't do it. And one of the places that I had to let some things go was around visiting people who were at home that were sick. So I got a group of lay people from the congregation together. I trained them to be pastoral care folks, and I sent them out to say, it is now your job to go visit everybody who's at home, who's in a nursing home, who's sick and shut in, and to let me know when it's time for me to go visit them. Because I just could not, I mean, with everything I was doing, I just could not, and I didn't want our people who were sick and shut in to feel neglected. I use it just as an example that there are ways that clergy can, I mean, there's a lot more lay folks than they are clergy. So, being able to be empowered as the laity to say, hey, you know what? You may not be great at administration. Maybe 2 or 3 of us can get together to be an administration advisory committee to you. Sometimes it's just being able to offer that to whoever the person is that's in leadership. Maybe the person's not very good at being pastoral. Hey, we have some folks here who are pastoral. Maybe we put them together as a pastoral advisory committee for you to help you with whatever it needs to be. But it has to be done as a way as an invitation rather than a you need to get a pastoral care team. So great question. Thanks you, Jim. Lisa, or is it Lissa?
It's Lissa. Thank you for asking.
Lissa.
Hi, I'm Lissa, and my favorite ice cream is mint chocolate chip forever and forevermore.
Amen.
Also chocolate, all about chocolate. I have 2 questions, if I may. One of them is internal to Emmanuel, and the other one is really much more of a broader church question. So my question regarding Emmanuel is, I know you were talking about sort of this priest in charge process, and with a heavy emphasis on a lot of that happening from the diocesan level. And I'm curious about, having been on a search committee, I know that there's a lot that goes into what are we looking for, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm curious how the diocese and you all, and I know you know Emmanuel, I know Doris knows Emmanuel, but how will you all, what are some thoughts about how you would discern what Emmanuel's goals are going forward? What are you, I assume you're getting input from the vestry or from others. I'm not on the vestry right now, so I may be speaking in ignorance here. But there was a process for us, and I'm curious what the process is at the diocese level. That's my first question. Should I ask both at the same time or stop and let you answer that one?
You can stop and Doris can answer that one.
Okay, all right. That's fine. Thank you.
Hi, Lisa. So what we did was, yes, in talking with your vestry leadership, in the knowledge that I have of Emmanuel, of knowing some of the needs, some of the hurt, what have you, putting together someone who, based on that knowledge, we really thought would work well with you, and could, as I said, continue the Lombard Mennonite Peace Center going forward in regards to a priest in charge. Absolutely. And just because you get a priest in charge doesn't mean that the congregation doesn't do some of the work in regards to the goal setting, the visioning, and this is what we think we need. And it's, we still gather all of that information, and that all of that is put into the hopper when I go to a transition conference, or when I'm talking to another priest or what have you. So it's not, the judgment isn't made in a vacuum. Okay.
Well, and what I may add to that, Lissa, just so that we can understand the different processes, because I think sometimes that's where some of the confusion happens with how different processes work. So the canons that dictate some things, right? So they tell me what I'm supposed to do. They tell Sally what she can and can't do. They tell Clive what he can. And so they're there to kind of give us, I think, guideposts. Because there was a dissolution of a pastoral relationship at Emmanuel, that puts it in a slightly different category than you would do a regular rector search or a regular priest in charge search. So because there's a dissolution of a pastoral relationship, the bishop suddenly becomes, the role that the bishop and the bishop's office plays is amplified. So the bishop is the one who does the search for the congregation. The bishop is the one who appoints for a set period of time. So there's some things that I have to do canonically because of what was triggered by a dissolution of a pastoral relationship. If your rector had just simply either resigned or retired or moved on to another call, and you wanted to go the priest in charge route, that would be slightly different. You would still get a priest in charge, but you would do the work of surveying the congregation, and you would still put together a parish profile and all that stuff. So because this one is slightly different, the canons dictate what has to happen. And so it's slightly different, but it's still the same type of priest in charge model. And because, I mean, what we didn't want was for you to have to spend 2 years, almost 18 months and 2 years doing the work of coming up with a profile and surveys and all of that stuff. I think you wanted to get somebody who can walk with you for the next couple of years as you begin to sort all of that out.
You know, and I part of that too was that we wanted you to be able to put, for Emmanuel, to be able to put its emotional energy into learning and moving past this. And a search, as you well know, takes up a lot of emotional
the energy out of the room.
and so we thought that Emmanuel would be better served by concentrating its efforts and its energy in a different manner than having that kind of bled out in a search. So
thank you. That's very helpful. I appreciate the clarification on that, the distinction there. That's very helpful. So my next question, and before I do the next question, I just do want to give a little shout out to Sally and Clive and to thank them very much. I'd be happy to have them for the next 4 years personally, but I just wanted you all to know, I think you're doing a fabulous job. But my next question is, from the broader church and moving forward with the church as a whole, one of my concerns and questions, and really it's for Emmanuel as well, is how, I know that there's a strategic planning process going on. I understand, and in some ways part of that, but I'm a little concerned about bringing in young people before they're married with children and after they finish high school and college. And I'm a little bit worried about that transitional piece. And so, and I don't know how much that's being looked at. And I know we can't serve absolutely everyone, but it concerns me that there are many other congregations that are able to make that happen. And we haven't quite figured that one out yet.
Yeah. So there are a couple things that I can, there's more than a couple of things. I've taught a whole class on that whole thing. How do you bring young people and young families into a worshiping community? It is not easy. I will tell you that. And it takes intentionality. For a long time, we as the church became really focused on inward looking, at looking at ourselves and taking care of the people who are in our pews, rather than being outward focused and looking at the people who are outside of our doors. And this isn't just Emmanuel, this is like the church with a big C, all the denominations. Because if you look at the American landscape right now, all mainline denominations are in decline. There are very few young people, well, there are pockets, but there are very few young people as a general whole in the church. Part of what's happened is, again, we put the emphasis on the wrong syllable. I love using that little phrasing because it really is the truth. We became kind of inwardly focused, and we stopped letting people see who we are and what we do. Right now, more millennials and late Gen Xers are looking for a place where they can connect to community. They don't necessarily need theology. You know, in the age of Google, I can Google any theological term that I want and find an answer and figure out what I need from that. What I can't Google is the connection that I get on a Sunday morning with the people who show up at church, right? You know, I can't Google community. I can't Google, you know, the feeling of somebody coming by my house and bringing me food. And you know, we Episcopalians, we love to feed people. And so the question that I think that we have to ask ourselves is not even so much how do we grow the church. I don't care about growing the church. That sounds really terrible that the bishop just said, I don't care about growing the church. Here's what I mean. I am more interested in you being a faithful follower of Jesus than going to go make more Episcopalians. Because here's the reality. If you are faithful and a faithful follower of Jesus, there will be more Episcopalians because people will see you and see what you do and want to be a part of what you're doing. So, you know, I live in Webster. I literally can walk down the street, well, more than down the street, but I can walk to Emmanuel. Across the street from Emmanuel is Webster University. There is a whole bunch of young people in your backyard waiting for a connection to community through you. So my question is, what does college campus ministry look like from Emmanuel with a college right across the street? What do we do with those young people? You know, they may not all show up in our church, and we know that college students are poor. They are not going to help fill up your budget. But, you know, being faithful to your call to follow Jesus, those kids across the street are looking for connection. They're looking for community. They're looking for a community to love them, especially if they're from out of state. You know, they don't have grandma or mom's cookie cooking or cookie baking. So, you know, what would it look like for Emmanuel to say intentionally, we are going to adopt Webster University and make sure that those kids have a connection to community? You know, some of them will probably stay in the area and some of them will join you, but it's really not about whether they come and join you or not. It's by showing them what the love of Jesus looks like. So what does ministry to Webster University look like? What does ministry to the young families that are around? I mean, there's a preschool at Emmanuel. You know, what do those young families need? Are you praying for those young families that are calling Emmanuel home for they drive to you 5 days out of the week, right? So are you praying for them? Are you inviting them into your worship space, into the social life of the community? These are all the questions that I think that you probably should be percolating and thinking about and stewing about. Because again, if it's about wanting more young people of all ages, we have to be intentional about reaching out to them. You know, what would it look like if you offered those preschool parents a date night? Hey, drop the kids off on a Saturday night. You can go out to Webster for dinner and have a date night and we'll take care of the kids. You know, I can tell you I would be happy to come drop my 9-year-old off. But again, it takes some intentionality on our part to say to young people that they're valued. The other part, and this is where I'm this is my liturgical consultant coming out. What does your worship space say about welcoming young people and young kids? If I bring a young kid into church, is there intentional space for that young kid to feel welcome? Is there soft space for little toddlers to run around and play? Are they going to get dirty looks from people when the baby on the 6th row from the right side starts screaming? Or are somebody going to go, I will happily help you calm your baby down and be present with you. You know, is our worship, is our welcome, is our hospitality to young families there? And how do we enhance what we already have? So, you know, again, I spent a lot of time as a liturgical consultant, and those are the type of questions that I would encourage communities to ask. You know, who is literally outside your door that you could be ministering to? Because isn't that what Jesus did? I mean, he literally walked around and ministered to the people who were right in front of him. So who is right in front of you that needs ministering to? You know, I would posit Webster University is literally across the street from you, and they need, as my grandmother say, they need a dose of Jesus. The preschool is in your building. Those families need community and, you know, to know about the love of Jesus. So there's lots of opportunities. You are given the opportunity to sit and say, how can we impact and show God's love to the people who are literally right outside of our door? So great question, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much. I appreciate the answer.
No, not a problem. Other questions, comments, or things that you would like? Oh, I see there's a question in the chat that I didn't answer. Can you let us know how the search process is going? Yes, I can. Actually, no, I can't.
Oh.
Doris can.
Thank you, Doris, and I like chocolate chip.
Thank you, Kathy. I love your last name. I've seen it somewhere before.
Well, everybody gets to talk about their favorite ice cream, so I'm going to tell you mine. It's butter pecan. Okay. So where are we in the search? We've identified someone. We've been in consultation and conference with them, and this should be announced very soon. Okay.
The end is near, and not in an ominous way at all. Dave, and then Hillary.
Yeah, I just want to throw out just a quick observation. People may not agree, but I think the last few months with Sally and Edie, Sally to me like nurtures our heart with like the Way of Love course that she took us through, which was awesome. Then you got Edie nurturing our head with the conflict resolution stuff. But the point is, it's like team teaching. You got two people, like two experts, two specialists benefiting our congregation. And it just got me thinking about, you know, maybe the solution just isn't one rector, you know, or it's a core rector, but surrounded like the hub of the wheel with specialists that help us in the different areas of our church. Because I think Edie and Sally together have been tremendous.
Well, in a sense, that's what you're going to be getting. The resources of the diocese is going to be there to help you through and to help that your new priest in charge as well. So part of when I say that we are looking to be a resource, we really are looking to be a resource. Canon Doris does amazing work around leadership and development. Canon Whitney, as you all know, is an amazing at discipleship development and evangelism. That's why we called her. And so all of those resources are available to you. All of those resources are available to the congregations. And so, you know, we really do want to make sure that you are successful in whatever it is. And so we can offer whatever we can offer, we will offer to you. I think there was someone who, Hillary had her hand up first, and then I think Katherine, and then Christine.
My questions are more sort of logistical, following up a little bit on what Doris said. You've been talking to someone, you've identified someone. First question is what next? What happens after that? And then more of a just sort of a day-to-day operation stuff. I don't quite understand what the responsibilities of a priest in charge is. Will that individual be able to do the administrative stuff? Will they have staffing and budgeting and, day-to-day operations like a rector would, or are there additional levels of reporting requirements back to you at the diocese?
So the priest in charge has all the rights, responsibilities, and roles of the rector. So anything that a rector can do, the priest in charge can do. The only difference is the priest in charge reports directly to the bishop. So there is, instead of being, I don't want to say reporting to the vestry, but instead of being a tenured rector, the priest in charge is responsible to the bishop directly. So they have a direct relationship with me and my office. So, if there is something that arises, if there's a significant conflict or something is building, I can say to that priest in charge, your time is done. So that's the only, I don't want to say the only, but that's the major difference, is that the bishop can remove a priest in charge without a whole lot of, without too much. Canonically, a priest in charge is much easier for me to step in and do something with.
And then the what's coming next part, timeline, what's next on the horizon for Emmanuel with regard to this new person?
Doris?
Well, I'm going to have to kick that to your senior warden, I think. So, but you should have someone, this particular person should be with you sometime this summer is my understanding. So.
And Hillary, my understanding is that she hopes to be with us by the end of the summer, certainly by the start of the program year. So probably sometime in August.
And so that we can stop dancing around this person, since we've said it a couple of times, it is a she. So she will be joining you, hopefully sometime midsummer.
And as I've said to the congregation before, the reason that we can't announce who it is or give more information at this time is because there's another congregation involved. So we have to honor their process and where they are as far as readiness for her to leave. And as soon as that gets to the right point, then Bishop will make that announcement.
Katherine and then Christine. Katherine, you're muted. There you go.
My ice cream. I guess this is more of a comment than a question. But one of the things that I think the last several months, again with Edie, I think COVID has been both positive and negative, but one thing I've come to realize is that we're a community of incredible deep faith. And that we're a community also that really cares about each other. And one of my favorite movies is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And for those of you who have seen it, fast forward, and he's got to save his father and go through the 3 challenges. And I see us now at the 3rd challenge at the precipice of taking the leap of faith. And we just need to hold hands, and we'll take that step. And actually there'll be a number of times when we're going to have to hold hands and take that step and find the walk in front of us. And it's not the deep pit, but we have to believe in God and believe in each other. And hold hands. There's a reason we hold hands for the Lord's Prayer. And we'll just have to have a lot of hand sanitizer. We can do this and move forward.
Yep. And thank you, Donna, for answering the question. Kathy, yes. The priest in charge has already begun some conversation with Sally and Clive and your clergy. So those conversations are already going on, but there will not be a dual overlap. So Sally and Clive's time will come to an end, and then the priest in charge will come in, but they have already been in conversation and are pretty well aware of how things are progressing. They will also see the work that you've already done with Edie And they've already had some conversation with Edie as well to talk about that work and how that's going to happen going forward. So like I said, we are trying to position everybody in this process for success. Like I said, I want to see the priest in charge succeed. I want to see Emmanuel succeed. You know, it is your best interest that we're all trying to look out for. Christine.
Hi. So hands down, it's Baskin Robbins mint chip every time. So actually my question kind of piggybacks on like Kathy's question and Dave's comments and what you were just hitting on. I guess maybe it's anxiety. When you look at this priest in charge coming whenever they arrive, Sally and Clive will be transitioning out. We're finishing up with Edie. We're just now starting to inch our way back after COVID with in-person worship and figuring all that out. For me personally, that seems like a really big stage to walk into as one priest. And obviously for budgetary reasons, we don't have an assistant priest or anything like that. So have there been conversations with this person coming in? I know you guys are there as a resource, but it is still a lot of work for one person to come in and do. And on top of that, they're walking into a congregation that needs a lot of pastoral care. So it seems like a lot. So is this something that has been discussed with this person? They've wide open know what they're walking into. And I just don't want this person to come in and be like, wow, this is a lot.
No.
Okay.
And Christine, they're going in with, with eyes open, and this person has a huge pastoral heart. And so this is, first of all, that wouldn't be fair to Emmanuel.
Yeah.
Okay. Let alone wouldn't be fair to whoever, would be stepping in. And so, our intent from day one has been that this person could come and could hit the ground running. And she'll have the reports, she'll have the conversations. This person is a person of deep prayer and discernment. So I think there's very little that would surprise this person. Okay. And I know that you are already in her prayers. So, and it is a lot, Christine, it's not just a lot for Emmanuel. I mean, what, as a church, as a culture, we have gone through in the last year, and you throw some other transitions, whether it be job changes, whether it be, empty nesting and launching your kids, there's so much right there. And so it's very understandable why the anxiety is high. It's high in everyone.
Sure.
There's not one church that the bishop and I deal with that isn't anxious right now and isn't in some way struggling, whether it's to define itself or to define its ministry, or thinking, oh my God, what are we going to do after COVID? Because COVID's substantially changed us. In some ways, our DNA has changed as a result of this pandemic. So everything you're feeling is really, really normal. And, the bishop and I we from the beginning have wanted to walk this way with you and to be as helpful to you and to Emmanuel as we can be. And so we're doing our best to do that. And it's a privilege to walk this way with you, as hard as this way is. Okay.
My mantra through all of this has been Julian of Norwich. All shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. I can't promise you that there won't be bumps along the way with your new priest in charge. There are going to be things that you will disagree and all of that stuff. I can't promise you that this person is a savior, because we only got one, and that was Jesus. What I can promise you is that this person will be faithful to you, that this person is going to try to work in the best interests of your congregation, of the community, and will challenge you in some ways, because that's kind of what we all need, that will challenge us to see things differently, to see things in a new light, and to say, you know what, maybe we need to move from here to there. And like I said, transition is hard, but I think that the person that we have identified and that's going to be working with you is uniquely skilled
yes.
at walking with you from a deep spiritual place. I mean, this person, it does not come from they can administer, but they come first from a spiritual and pastoral place. And if it gets to the point that you are in need of, if they need additional clergy help, that's something that we, again, can figure out working with them. But that has to be a decision that that person makes in conjunction with the vestry and the leadership of the congregation. What I don't want to do is to impose something onto your new priest in charge or onto you that you may not need. You know, so I mean, it would be easy to say, oh, well, we're just going to appoint an associate priest and just live with that person. That may not be the associate that you need.
Right, right.
So the good thing for us is that there are quite a few people going through the ordination process. And so, you know, having some transitional folks that could be there during the time is not out of the realm, but that needs to be a conversation with the priest in charge once they've been there for a little bit, and with the vestry, to kind of see what are the things that you may need. So the best thing I can ask for is your patience with the new person. Once they get there, to give them a little bit of time to get their feet on the ground and to get to know you.
Okay. Thank you.
Kathy.
Yeah, I think I'd like to pose this question a different way. How can we help the priest in charge feel welcome and be successful?
Doris, you want to tackle this one first before I jump in?
Okay. Oh, he always does this to me. He at our visitation yesterday, he said, "You can ask me anything you want, but the hard ones are going to her."
And then I get all the hard ones.
Right. So I think there are a few things. The very first thing is pray for this person every single day. Pray for this person and pray for your relationship with one another, and to be honest. Also to put in those new skills that you're learning from Lombard Mennonite Peace Center and what have you in regards to conversations. Give her the benefit of the doubt. I can tell you, I know this person very, very well, and she has a heart for congregations. I mean, she will come and she will love you. So between the patience and the prayer and giving yourself some time too, okay? Getting someone doesn't mean that something's going to be, perfect. It's not going to be perfect. But what I would hope is that through the patience and the prayers, you can work with one another and step out in courage to face what needs to be faced, but also in looking forward and saying, this is the heart of Emmanuel, and this is who God is calling us to be. And when we're at our best, this is what we do. So, and then to ask her when she gets there, and this rarely is done, and it should be done with every single priest as far as I'm concerned. See her, have an appointment and say, what can we do? What can the vestry do to help make your time here as successful as it can be? And then let her define that. Okay.
Well, and there's some practical things that you can do. Now imagine if everybody in the congregation took a photo of themselves with a little quick bio, and it got put together in a directory or a book or something that could be given to your new priest in charge. Because you're gonna see all kinds of stuff about her, but then she's going to have to start getting to know you. So what would it look like if you shorten that process to say, here's a picture of Kathy Johnson, I like chocolate chip ice cream and da 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 da, make it fun. What are some of the fun things that you could ask each other? When I first became a rector, one of the blessings that the congregation gave me, granted we weren't in COVID, is that we had lunch and dinner slots. So I would go and have lunch or dinner. They organized all of it with, there were 10 people at each. So 10 people for lunch and 10 people for dinner. And it was at the church. It was like a potluck or something like that. But it was a small enough group that I could just sit and talk to the different groups and get to know folks really quickly. And, I think we scheduled like 2 or 3 a week. So it was really cool just kind of having lunch with people that I just met that are now part of the congregation, and that we could talk a little bit more. You could do something like that. You could set up, for those who aren't able to do in person, small Zoom groups that you can sit together and do a little conversation and get to know each other. But, think of, if you're coming into something for the very first time, what would be helpful for you, and offer that to them.
Welcome her husband. Okay,
Mhm.
welcome her husband. He's a good old Southern boy. He laughs a lot. He's a great guy. He's going to be an asset to the men of Emmanuel. And when not just a priest is welcome, but a priest's family is welcomed, that goes a long way. And so don't forget, about that as well. Mm-hmm.
My neighbor down the street.
Sorry. Hi.
Hello, I've seen you somewhere.
Yeah, I saw your son the other day, and I may have scarred him for life because I entered the door in my pajamas. I thought it was my daughter, and it was Jalan. And it was like, anyway, he was good with it. He was fine. Anyway, my question is, Emmanuel hasn't had a deacon in quite some time. Do you foresee down the road that we might have a deacon to assist?
Surely, if I can find one, I will send one. One of the things that we're realizing, we have a shortage of deacons in the diocese. There's 17 deacons, and of the 17, I think we only have about 15 of them who are active, who have not retired. And we're just about to have another, I think 2 are going to retire this year. So we are woefully short on deacons. And so we have about 4 people who are going through the process right now for the diaconate. So there will be some deacons to assign in a little bit. But again, if there's someone at Emmanuel who has those gifts, and that's kind of what Sally and Clive and you all are there for. If there's someone who has that passion that you can see a diaconal ministry in, encourage them. I've said it, and I will say it with Sally and Clive and Canon Doris. If there's somebody at Emmanuel who has those gifts and skills to be a deacon, I don't have a problem with them going through the process, being ordained and serving back at Emmanuel. No, that has not been the case in the diocese in the past. So that is a little bit of a change, but I am perfectly fine with raising up deacons from a congregation and having them serve that congregation. So I leave it up to Sally and Clive, and I see Warren hiding out down there. So you don't get off the hook because you're retired, Warren. The discernment does not know age. That's all I will say.
Rainbow sherbet was my ice cream.
Ah, very good.
No,
so yes.
It's black raspberry.
So, well, any final questions as we wrap up our time this evening? For those of you who are introverts, now would be your time for the introverts question. Mary Killian.
Yes. Cherry chocolate chip. So any sense of where COVID is taking us? Do you see us opening up without masks soon? I mean, where's that trajectory going?
Yes. So this week, there's going to be new guidelines from the diocesan offices as to what you can do and can't do, etc. I'm surprised it's taken this long for that. This is usually the first question that I get. So because we know that vaccines are happening, and the CDC just came out with the new guidelines that if you're vaccinated, you can be in a group with other vaccinated people who are fully vaccinated, 2 weeks past their final shot. The guidance will say, if everybody in the congregation is fully vaccinated and the status is known, you can begin to, go maskless and not social distance. The challenge is, and that this is because we're church, if we're in person and we invite people in and we don't know their status, whether they're vaccinated or not, we have to assume that they're not, which means that masking and social distancing goes right back into place. So for instance, if you have a small gathering of 8 o'clock folks who are, 15 people, and those 15 people are all vaccinated, no mask are required, no social distancing is required. They can actually sing. If
You
those
won't get
15
that happening with 8 o'clockers.
well, I'm just saying, I mean, occasionally. But, if one person comes walking in and their status is unknown, singing goes away, the social distancing comes back, and a mask comes back. I mean, it's all about trying to protect each other. And so that's kind of where we are. I saw JJ, for choirs, if the choir is fully vaccinated, they can begin to rehearse unmasked together in the space. They can sing on Sunday mornings. Again, but because if the congregation, they can sit closer, they don't have to be 6 feet apart for the choir to sing if they're all vaccinated, once you know their status. But again, if they're singing as part of in-person worship, and there are people in the congregation that we don't know what their vaccination status is, the choir still just has to be, they can be close together, they just have to be masked. So you're kind of seeing where this is going. The more people that are vaccinated that are present, the more we can do. If there are people who are unknown status, we have to go back to, to social distancing and masking. The other piece that the guidance will suggest are these things called pods. So, like the choir would be a pod. If we know that I don't know how big the choir is, but if all 15 members of the choir are vaccinated, they are considered one pod. They can be close to each other. They can, they can share the peace, they can hug, they can do all of that stuff because they're a pod. If Donna and 7 of her closest friends came to church on a Sunday morning and they're all vaccinated, Donna and her 7 friends can sit in a pew together without distancing, all of that stuff, because they are a pod. They all know that they're vaccinated. They all know that they're safe to be around one another. So, creating pods as part of worship, and a pod counts as one in your space rather than 7 or 8 or however big the pod is. So pods of vaccinated people. But the thing is, we have to make sure that we don't segregate to say, oh, well, if you're not vaccinated, you can't come in. We are the church, we invite people in. So to be kind and hospitable to our neighbors, if somebody comes in and we don't know what their status of vaccination is, we just simply do social distancing and, wear masks. But the pods can still be in place. Donna's pod, all wearing masks and socially distancing from everybody else is okay. They don't have to social distance from each other. So did that make sense?
That makes perfect sense.
Okay.
Any hope for a communion cup anytime soon?
We're moving towards it. For the time being, we're going to hold off. I mean, more and more of the research is telling us that hard surfaces don't transmit COVID. So the deep cleanings and all that stuff is no longer necessary. So, cleaning everything after everybody's been in there, that's not needed. As people enter, hand sanitizing is enough by way of cleaning. And so all of this will come out in the guidelines that are going to come out this week, but the deep cleanings aren't needed. High contact surfaces cleaning are just good because of flu season. So, the door handles and all that stuff, giving them a periodical wipe off after everybody has left or something is a good practice outside of COVID. But, and like we know that COVID isn't transmitted generally through the cup. The challenge with the cup, and this is the problem, is if you dip individually, so if the congregation comes up and dips for themselves, that's bad because the germs on your hand touching blah, blah, blah. If you drink from the chalice and it's not wiped properly, you can leave some COVID on the chalice, so that becomes a problem. The ideal situation is one person taking the bread, dipping it into the cup and giving it off to the person, so there's only one hand touching it. So we might be a little bit of ways because, you know, we Episcopalians, we love our diversity. So some people are dippers, some people are sippers, some people are, you know, keep the wine away from me. So, you know, we kind of like our diversity of practices. So until we can get back to that, for the time being, we're not going to be doing the cup. But great question. And last one, Dave Butt.
Thank you very much. No, my question is that a great priest also has to be a great leader. And there are many different leadership styles, approaches, models that you can embrace. Does the Episcopal Church teach and instill a specific leadership approach or model in their priests?
No. What the church does is it pulls out and lifts up the gifts that are already there. So Paul, in that lovely thing, you know, we're all given different gifts for the building up of the body. You know, some are teachers, some are preachers, some are evangelists, all of that, you know, his lovely image. That's pretty much what it is. So like, I know Sally is pastoral at heart. That is her charism. She will be pastoral and she will care for you. Doris is the same thing. You know, she's a pastor at heart. That is what she does. That's kind of what I am. I'm much more, let's lean in and that's not to say that, you know, other folks don't have other gifts that are just as equally needed. So, you know, we need the priest who is also the theologian, who can take those big concepts and distill them so that you can understand. We need people who are really good storytellers, because that's what Jesus did. He told really good stories to show what God's kingdom is like. So each clergy person comes with a different set of gifts. It's just a matter of, you know, you're stronger in some areas. You know, the person that's coming to you is extremely pastoral, extremely spiritual, can distill theology really, really well. And I suspect that there's some things that she will not be able to do really well. And so you forgive the places that she can't do things well, and you celebrate the places that she can do the things well. And you'll hear me say this when we get to, I mean, because I say this at every celebration of new ministry. What I want you to do is to pray for her, not pray on her. And that's what I say to every congregation when a new leader comes in. Pray for your leader, don't pray on your leader, because there is a difference. So, you know, and I will remind you, there's only one savior that we got, and that's Jesus. This person will not be your savior. They're not going to suddenly make the budget balance and a whole bunch of young families and millionaires are going to join the congregation. That would be nice. If they do, let me know. But, you know, the call for you as members of Emmanuel is to be faithful followers of Jesus, to follow that way of love, to be faithful to telling those stories that brought you to Emmanuel and keep you there. Pig. And then I have to get going because I have a 9-year-old that needs to go to bed in about 7 minutes.
My question has to do with the greater church. Is it true that in 2022 that a new presiding bishop will be elected?
No.
Well, from what I've seen on the internet, I wonder, because he's
2024.
2024.
Yes. So in 2022, we will form the committee that will help select the new presiding bishop, but a new presiding bishop won't start until 2024.
Now, are they, the amount of time that they're in office, is that have a specific time?
So the presiding bishop serves for 9 years.
Okay.
So at the end of 9 years, depending on the age of the presiding bishop can either serve another 9-year term or they're term limited out. So Michael Curry, because of his age, he would be over 72 is mandatory retirement for clergy. So if he tried to serve a second term, another 9 years, he would be over 72, so he's not eligible for a second term. most of our bishops tend to be a little bit older when they're elected. So a presiding bishop that serves 2 terms is unusual.
You would never think of him as being an older bishop.
No, but
he's young at heart. He may be 67, but he's young at heart.
He wears it well. So, well, thank you all so much for taking the time to be part of our conversation this evening. It's always a joy to be with you. And I'm looking forward to when I can be with you all in person, and that we can celebrate your new priest in charge and do the celebration of new ministry and make a big deal and all that stuff. So in the meantime, continue to be faithful, continue to pray for each other, to pray for your new priest in charge, to do the work of the Lombard Mennonite Peace Center. I got it right. And continue being faithful followers of Jesus and dream about what Emmanuel needs to be when it grows up. So be well, stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask, get vaccinated, pray, and pray often. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you all.